Welcome to the latest episode of 40 Zoomcast Table Tennis Topics and Tactics. On March the 8th, it was International Women's Day, so this edition is to celebrate women and girls in sport. What are the joys, challenges, opportunities, and are they different from men? I am joined by our very own Joan Smith, Table Tennis and Badminton. Good evening, Joan. Back after 5 years is Sue Strackan, squash and cricket. So good evening to Sue.
Good evening, David.
And new to the podcast is Susan Anderson, squash and pickleball. And the name I've been practicing for the last 5 minutes is Charis Scott from Rugby. Well, let's start with a little bit of background. So how did you get into sport? How has your journey been and why are you still involved? And I'm going to ask Stu Strackan to kick us off, Sue. So over to you.
Thanks, David. How did I get involved in sport? Well, as a young teenager, and perhaps as a sort of older child, young teenager, I was lucky enough to have an older brother who threw balls at me, kicked balls at me, and if I didn't catch them or fend them off, then they hurt. So one of the reasons I got into sport was just to be able to catch the ball that my brother was launching at me. But I was also lucky at school that I had the opportunity to play lots of different sports at school. And that really started my sporting journey with lots and lots of different sport. And the ability to choose which of those I wanted to carry on. I carried on particularly playing squash as a junior, and then I gave up sport when I was at university or finishing university and qualified as a young doctor. I gave up sport for a long time, and in fact, I didn't pick up a squash racket for 17 years. But when I got back to it, I realized what a big hole that lack of sport had made, and how I missed my sporting friends, and how I missed the girls and women that I played sport with, in my hockey team, in squash teams, in all sporting arenas. So I got back to squash and tennis. I started playing hockey again, and then I got into cricket, which I'd never been allowed to play as a youngster because there was no opportunity for girls. So I now have continued to be involved in cricket. I still play a little, but I'm involved as a women's tour manager for Scotland women's team, and I'm continuing my squash. Now I'm 61 and I'm playing masters squash, and I now have contact through my squash all over the world, and lovely people everywhere that I can call on for a game. If I take my racket and my shoes wherever I go, I can pretty much get a game of squash and meet people who have a shared love of sport. So I now want to share the joy that I have got from sport with as many other girls and women as possible, because I know many of them have not been given the opportunity and the encouragement to get involved, perhaps by their own family members. And so if I can help them get involved and share the joy and share the love, then that's what I'm going to do.
Can I just ask you a question before I go over to Susan? Do you have a preference for team sports or individual sports? The reason why I ask that, because I play cricket, and cricket is almost an individual game in a team environment. And I just wondered that squash is very much individual, but you can be a team. And I just wondered if you have a preference.
I have to say, given the preference, I would play as part of a team. Even with my squash, I would play my squash as part of a team playing squash. I love playing as a team. I play better if I'm playing as part of a team than I do as an individual. And I love that feeling of being a team member and the feeling of doing it for the people around about you. Squash, yes, is an individual sport, and cricket is perhaps the most individual team sport. But team sport is something very special, and I wouldn't miss out on team sport for anything.
Brilliant. Excellent. Right, Susan, let's hear about your journey.
Hi there. Yes, like Sue, it was school. School would get me started in sports, the usual badminton and table tennis, hockey, and then when I was about 14, our local, from Crieff, small town, local hotel had squash courts, and it was all new to us in the 80s. And we got, well, Joan is actually my sister. So Joan got in there first, and then obviously anything Joan can do, I can try and do better. So started playing squash, and every other sport went to the wayside. I just fell in love with it. So that was it for 30 odd years. I played squash all, and I didn't go to university, but I didn't give up any time. I travelled, worked for the bank, I travelled, and like Sue, if I had a pair of shoes and my squash racket with me, you could find a match to play or somebody to play any clubs that you were visiting. So that was fine. I had to give it up. Well, I had to give it up. I've had 2 hips replaced, and albeit I could try and play, the pain was just incredible. Just after I had both my hips done 6 years apart. So then I found pickleball, or it was just somebody randomly had said, she was introducing me to walking football, and she said, do you want to come and play pickleball as well? I am an individual sports person. The walking football wasn't for me as much. And the pickleball, again, it was just, I couldn't believe I would love a sport as much as I loved squash, well, nearly as much as squash. So, so I now play pickleball. I now have just become a coach at pickleball, and I've got a 90-member club that me and another girl is set up, again, just so that everybody can love pickleball. And it ranges from all ages pickleball. I've got 70, 80-year-olds, playing. It's amazing. And I just see it as a sport that I'll be able to play for a long, long time still. I feel I'm quite young to be playing pickleball. So, so I love it. I still love squash. I wish I could still play squash, but I'll give that a miss for now.
Regarding pickleball, it's growing everywhere. Even in Moffat, our local gym has just said, "Come to pickleball." Can you tell us roughly what the game is in simple terms? I believe it's played on a badminton court. I believe the net is like short tennis. But can you just
It is, and I'm not being rude, but it's pickleball, as in pickle gherkins, yeah. So it's pickleball. It's played, you're right, on a badminton size court, so it's the same dimensions. You can play singles, but it's always doubles that I play, but you can play singles, but you use the whole dimensions of a badminton court, which is great. The net is lowered, and a bit like short tennis, but you play with a paddle bigger than a table tennis bat, and you play with a ball with holes in it, like when you were a kid. So a wiffle ball, I think it's called. And there are some rules in pickleball you won't get anywhere else. Let me think. You can't. So in a badminton court, the serving area. I don't know what it's called, Joan. Where the line is up to the net. You can't stand in there and volley in pickleball. You've got to be behind this line, and then you can't volley the ball until there's been 3 bounces. They're just silly little rules like that. But it's played. We play with doubles, and and it is one of the fastest growing, I think, with paddle, fastest growing sports in the world at the moment. So
just one more question on that. In every other sport, I might have a £200 tennis racket, and you might have a £20 one, or a £200 table tennis bat, and you might have a £5 one. Again, are they good pickleball bats, or does everybody play with the same bat?
No, I've seen people play with a piece of wood, which it was the first probably pickleball paddle. Was just a bit of plywood, and now you've got all your graphites and you can pay a lot more than £200 for a paddle. But I don't know enough about it, what the difference is, but yes, you can pay a lot of money for paddles.
Brilliant. Okay, Joan, tell us about your journey.
Well, very similar to Susan. We're quite a sporty family. I loved gymnastics to start with, and our PE teachers were great at our schools. And then our physics teacher actually was very good at badminton and got the school badminton team going. So I loved that. And then I found squash. It was our older sister, Linda, that started playing squash. So then we followed in her footsteps and just loved it. And then I met Sue through that as well. And sister Susan got into the Scottish team. And then the following year, I thought, oh, I would love to get in the Scottish team and play for Scotland, and did eventually. So I've had many years playing all over the place for Scotland, which was really, really good. And also in Shetland, we have an island games every second year. So some years there was squash in it, but other years there wasn't. So there was table tennis. So I kind of dabbled in both sports. And then more recently, I've retired from PE teaching, and I wanted a little job. So I'm now the development officer for table tennis in Shetland. So my focus is on that, and so is my hobby at the moment. So, and table tennis has taken me all over the place as well. So yeah, so that's been my journey. And I'm not really a team player, but I do love playing for like the Masters squash, where I met Sue and played with Susan. And now I'm doing the vets. It's called vets in table tennis. So I'm playing in the vets, home nations, hopefully. So I love playing as part of a team there. That's really good. But I don't really play any other team games. Maybe volleyball is the closest game that I've enjoyed that was a team game.
And is veterans age in squash the same as table tennis? 40, 50, 60?
No, it starts at 35 and it goes up 5-yearly increment, whereas table tennis is like 40, 50, 60. So squash, there's a lot more categories.
Yeah.
And I think squash maybe goes up much higher. Does it go up to 75 or over? Because table tennis is up to 70 and then it goes to 75. And then I don't know if there's anything after that.
There's an over 90s.
Is there?
There is indeed.
Well, that's what I'll be striving for then.
Brilliant. Okay, Charis, have I said it right for once?
Yeah, you did. You got it right. Yeah.
Well done. I've been so nervous about getting that wrong. I can now relax. Charis, tell us about your journey as the youngest member of the group.
So I've always been sporty since a young age. I was full of energy and got into a lot of sports, but my love was very much for team sports and playing in a team. So it wasn't till I was about 10 when I found football and joined the local football team, and I absolutely loved it. The opportunities that it kind of gave me was fantastic, and the group of people I got to meet and got to compete all over the country. And I continued to play football probably into my teens when I got injured, and that's kind of when I stopped playing sports for a while. And it wasn't until I went to uni and I got asked the question, what do I do in my spare time and what my things I'm interested in, and I was like, actually, I'm not too sure. And I kind of decided to take sports back up, joined the uni football team, and then joined my local football team as well, and fell back in love with the game. So I played football for a number of years, and then I moved to Shetland for my work. And at the time, there was no women's football team. And I knew individual sports in me is not a good mix. I'm way too competitive. I need a team environment to kind of bounce off one another. So I joined the local rugby team, not having any rugby knowledge before then. And yeah, it was probably the best decision I made, joining that sport. You know, we always call ourselves a big group of, we're just a family. Basically, we all kind of get together, surround each other, support each other. And rugby is such a lovely sport because anyone can play it. And we always say that, you know, you need every body shape, every size to play. I'm 5'2". I'm not exactly intimidating at all, but there's still a position for me on that pitch, just like everyone else. And I think that's the beauty of rugby in itself, and the beauty of many sports is it is for everyone. You don't need to be this certain build or have this knowledge of the sport beforehand. It's just kind of getting involved and then seeing what happens. And then through the rugby, I've coached for many years, but I got into coaching for the rugby as well. I've coached football. So it's nice seeing that side as well, and like supporting the youth and coming through. And definitely I coached a girls team for many years, and it's lovely to actually see that sport grow, especially rugby being one that a lot of my teammates only picked up later in life, but now we've got kids coming through that are playing rugby, getting involved and getting to experience that love for the game so early on. And I think being a part of that in the coaching journey is amazing. Yeah, so that's kind of me. And I also work in sports, so it's just constant speaking about sports all day long. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, you can all pick up on this. Every Monday I play walking football with all the other old farts at Shilleth, and we have a terrific turnout. And I believe Sue Strackan, they've introduced a walking cricket, haven't they, as well? Don't know whether you know that.
Yeah, there is walking cricket some places. Certainly, there's also sort of age group cricket in the Masters age groups as well. Not so much in Scotland, but I think it will come. I think walking cricket. Some people would suggest that everybody walks in cricket anyway if they're not just standing still. But actually, I think walking cricket is a great game and will hopefully keep people who love the game involved in the game more longer, because I think cricket is certainly one of those games that we seem to lose people once they stop playing. We lose them, whereas I see, particularly with squash, I see the fact that all of us Masters players get together, we play together, we're a community, and like Charis said, with the rugby, we're a big family, and I think cricket has the potential to do that. It's just a little bit further behind than some of the other sports, I think.
I think one of the reasons, I mean, I used to captain my local cricket team, and you would ring a player up, see if he was available. Then you'd tell him it was cancelled because of rain. He'd be available next week and it was cancelled again. And then the third week he wasn't available. So I think in a lot of ways, I found cricket very hard to actually sort of, because of that lack of continuity, where you might go 3 or 4 weeks without. Anyway, I'm veering off the subject. I believe there's walking rugby as well, isn't there, Charis? Walking rugby?
Yeah, we play up in Shetland. There's quite a lot of walking sports now. So football, rugby, netball are also bringing in walking sports. So it's actually taken off in a lot of areas, and it's really good. Because obviously it's another way to kind of play the sport you love, and for a long time, really. So yeah, it's good fun. No tackling though in walking rugby.
Okay, right. I've drifted way off the subject, which is typical me. So what I'd like to do is take the first question. Joan, can you read the first question, and Sue will do her best to answer it? That was from Colin.
Yeah, so this is from Colin Wilson. To what extent should women and girls be coached differently to men and boys due to anatomical differences between the sexes?
Okay. I could go on for hours on this one, but I won't. Don't worry, David. I think, there are many parts to this. The biggest theme to this is that women and girls are not just small men and boys. They are physiologically different. They are psychologically different. And people who coach them should learn to understand them before they coach them, I think. I think coaching women and girls can be incredibly rewarding, and often more rewarding than coaching boys, because certainly girls in team sports, they're a self-selecting bunch often, because historically sport has not been a cool thing for girls to do. Then girls will choose to play sport because they want to play that sport, and so they're immediately often easier to engage. But you have to make it fun, and you have to give them the opportunity to have a laugh as well as learning. And they will learn, and they will learn more if you let them have fun at the same time. And I think that understanding coaching girls can be quite difficult, and it can be quite scary for male coaches who've not had any experience in coaching girls. But I would say to them, actually, you'll find it is surprisingly rewarding, but you do need to give them the opportunity and the space to be girls and to be girls together and to have loads of fun while they're doing the sport. But if you do that and you challenge them and you make things competitive, then you will notice that they will come on and they will develop and they will learn and they will ask you questions. You need to be ready to be challenged, though. You need to be ready to be asked, why is it we're doing that? And what is the point of this? Because girls will do that and women will do that as well. Mm-hmm. But that's great. It just is a case of understanding that there are differences, not trying to do things in the same way, but actually embracing those differences and embracing the learning around about it. And if you do that, then I think if you speak to some male coaches who have done that, they will tell you how rewarding coaching girls and women can be. And I think you don't have to be a woman to do that, but it's probably an easier place to start from because you automatically understand the sort of cohesive nature of girls in team sports particularly. And also the fact that girls often have a very loud voice inside their head, which is very critical of themselves. And so adding to that voice does not help. They will have a loud voice in their head often because of society and the way that we are brought up that tells them they're not good enough. They're, you need to be encouraging. You need to be possibly more encouraging to girls than you do to boys. Certainly through their teenage years, you need to give them the opportunity to fail without consequences. You need to help them understand that failing is a part of the learning process. All of these things come into it. But if you can manage to do all of that and understand that you are coaching girls and women, you are not trying to do the same as you would with coaching boys, then you will find it possibly more rewarding and sometimes much more rewarding. I don't know if the others would agree with that or maybe have comments.
Yeah. Susan, do you want to chip in there?
I've not coached. So I suppose I have. I did coaching with girls at squash when they were younger as well. So, yeah, and I totally agree. Some girls don't want to sweat and they don't want to. You've got to treat them a bit differently. But it is absolutely rewarding. But I also coached boys as well. So, possibly, yeah. I'm probably not great to answer this question because I don't know if I was young myself at the time, so I probably didn't think too much about, the coaching side of it. I was probably early 20s when I used to do the coaching there. But I do know that women and men are totally different. Their whole outlook to sport is totally different. And so, yes, encourage women because I think they've got a lot more to prove at all ages.
Yeah. Charis, have you got a view on this?
Yeah, I think I probably agree with everything like kind of Sue said, that there is differences. And I think as a coach, you can't ignore that. You have to understand that you can't have the same approach going in. But I think you should expect the same though. Like the coaches that I respond best to are the ones that truly believe you can do absolutely anything you put your mind to. Do you know my football coaches that tell you you're not women playing football, you are football players? Do you know that is a huge thing, and it's huge to have a coach that supports you like that no matter what your gender is. But I think definitely from coaching girls, you need to let them talk, you need to let them have fun. It's very different atmosphere. The things they speak to you about, you're like, okay, we need to speak for everything before we get started in the session. But if you do that, they will engage and they'll bring it their all. And like Sue said, that they choose to be there. Unlike sometimes, it's maybe generalizing a little bit, but boys tend to play sports more than women, more than girls. So you've got girls coming because they want to come and they want to be there. So you've got a captive audience, but you do have to acknowledge that you have to have a different approach. And I think both coaching boys and girls is extremely rewarding, and for different reasons. And I've had coaches that are men and they're fantastic, absolutely, but it's because they respect us and us in our sport, and that's why they're fantastic at it.
If I could go back to Sue and before us Joan's come in, what about the physical? What Colin actually mentioned, the physical. I think the humerus generally is shorter in a woman than a man. Does that, should we worry about that, or are we overthinking things?
I think that physiologically we are, and anatomically we are different. And so you have to understand that as a baseline, but then you have to help that individual try and maximize their potential. You probably have to consider some more basic movement ergonomics with girls, because often they have not learned perhaps some of the basics of movement quite as well as the boys have before they come to sport. And so to put in like the FIFA 11 Plus is a great example of a sort of 15-minute exercise that you do with young female footballers. And if you do it 3 times a week, you reduce their injury risk massively, because you're teaching them to move properly and you're teaching them stability and strength. And often the boys might come to a sport already with those attributes, and the girls, you may have to help them develop those attributes. But it's about maximizing their potential. It's about understanding the differences. It's about not expecting them to be the same, but to actually embrace and celebrate the fact that they're different, but they have different potential. And often, for example, teenage girls will tend to mature earlier than the boys do. And so you will have potentially more mature girls at 12 than you will have boys. And so, maximize that potential, use their maturity psychologically to engage them in helping themselves become the best athlete they can be. So yeah, it is different. And you have to understand that, but you can also embrace that, and actually it's about helping that individual athlete be the best they can be.
Okay, Joan, have you got anything to add, or are you happy with your colleagues, or have you got something to add on that?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody was saying. And 2 years ago, or for the last 3 years, I think I've had International Women's Day table tennis session, and after it, all the women are asking, can we just get a separate session by ourselves? Like, most of these women are not playing in the leagues or anything because they just don't have the confidence to, although they have the ability. But I think the mindset of maybe women and girls, well, maybe not all, but a lot of them just feel I'm not good enough, or am I good enough? So it's just giving encouragement and just, trying to say, yes, you are good enough. Whereas I think men have a similar standard. They just throw themselves into it and they don't care. But the women are like, oh, but no, I don't think I'm really good enough to play in the league on a Tuesday night. But they certainly would like their own session. And this is like women, lots of different ages. They prefer just female only session. And they just feel more comfortable with that. So I think there is big differences.
Yeah. So did you want to come back in on that? Yeah.
Yeah. Cricket Australia did some really good research around about barriers to girls and women getting involved in cricket. And fear of judgment was the biggest barrier for girls and women getting involved in cricket. And possibly that's even more so for individual sport, because you're out there on your own.
Yeah.
And so I think society, somehow, the society that we have been brought up in, that's hopefully changing, makes women and girls feel that they will be judged by themselves partly, but by others. And so often that's a massive barrier to getting involved. And that's where the female-only space comes in. They feel they're less likely to be judged in the female-only space because they know that everybody else in that space is also worried about being judged too. And so you tend to find often a more supportive, empowering environment in the female-only space. I don't think it's not on purpose that the male environment makes women feel judged. I don't think that if you ask most men, they would think that that was the case, but somehow we believe that, and I'm not really quite sure why we do, but we definitely do. So fear of judgment is massive.
If I could, I don't know who wants to pick this question up. Some of my own observations is I've spoken to a lot of women that I used to coach when they were 15, 16, up to 21. They're now in their 40s and 50s. And more than one has said to me, when they were playing table tennis full time, they really enjoyed the training. They loved the routines, they loved the drill, but they were terrified when they played matches. So when they look back at their career, that playing matches was a necessary evil. Where if I turn my back on men, they stop training and they'll have a game behind my back. They think I don't notice, but I do. Yeah. So has anybody got a comment on that about enjoying the training more than the matches, or something you've not come across? Nobody?
Yeah, I love the training. I would train every day of my life.
Yeah.
Now, when you say, right, a game 0-0, it's like, panic. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting better at that, so that's good.
Okay.
A lot of mindset work going on.
Right. I think a bit of crossover, but Joan, again, do you want to read out Dylan's first observation? This is Dylan De Silva from Dumfries Table Tennis Club.
So if the conclusion is that there are fundamental differences in the male and female game, I would add to that, is it therefore better if girls are coached by women rather than men, or is it just a case that male coaches be educated to understand the women's game to work with girls?
I think we've partly covered that, but I'm going to get Charis to, as someone who is coaching and has probably been coached by men and women. Has Dylan got a point there, do you think, Charis? Or
I think a coach, your role is to support that individual be the best they can be, no matter if you are male or female. I think if you go in with the attitude that you want to get the best out of your athlete, but understand that there is differences and adapt your coaching style, then I think it shouldn't matter as such. But I definitely know from myself growing up and me now as an adult that it is nice to see women coaching, have that representation in the sport, and be able to aspire to that as well. And it's not taking anything away from male coaches. I currently am coached by two wonderful guys, and they're brilliant, and we wouldn't want anyone else to coach us. But I think it is so empowering being able to see coaches that are women in the sport, at international stage as well. Like all these team sports now have women managers. Like that is something that's amazing, and that's not something I've seen as a kid as much. And it shows you where you can kind of go and what you can lead to and what you can aspire to. So that's kind of my answer. I think it is very much, you need to understand the differences, but respect the individuals and want to get the best out of them. If that answers the question.
Does anybody else want to come in there? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky as a teenager. I had a female coach, and I still keep in touch with my female coach now. We still send our photos when we're playing in the nationals, the West Juniors. She's had both hips and both knees replaced, Susan, and she's now playing golf instead of squash. But she was very empowering. It was all about us, not about her. And I think that's something that's very noticeable with many female coaches, that that it's all about the athletes, and you often don't hear much about the coach. And maybe that's a gender difference. I do think that at high level, international level, that often, for example, in cricket, the female coaches in cricket know the women's game better than the male coaches do. And there are differences in the women's game compared to the men's game. And they understand those differences, and they're able to get potentially better out of their team because of that. So I think that's certainly a different at high level. I think Charis is right. I think having female role models, either performing or within the sport as coaches, is hugely inspiring as a young athlete and as an older athlete. It's great to see women who are coaching, who are managing, who are physios for international teams, who are, you know, the likes of Rosie Ryan, who Charis and I both know, who's now head of development girls and women's rugby in Scotland. You know, she was one of the young footballers in Dumfries Girls Football Club with my daughter and with Charis, and there she is, you know, at the top of the SRU and head of development. So it's great to see that, and it's great to give the girls that feeling that they can aspire to be whoever they want to be. But I also think that these high-performing female coaches at international level really know the female game, and I think that is a qualitative difference between them and the male coaches.
Joan, most of your table tennis career, I guess you were coached by men, people like me, unfortunately, Chris Graham. Did you long for hope there was a female coach to come and coach, or did you think about it a lot? Or
no, I was just delighted there was a coach. It didn't matter. I was delighted, and like Chris and you and everybody knows that the women's game is slightly different from the men's. So it hasn't made any difference to me, although I've been lucky to be on a few camps recently, like the Cook and Deaton camp, and so that's the first time I saw some female coaches, and that was super. But Chris is fantastic. You were fantastic, Dave. And just anybody that I've had coaching with, Stephen Gertson, Sam Wilson, and just like I don't care as long as I'm getting coached, and they expect the same of me as they would like a male. And
Susan, anything to add, male and female coaches, and then we'll come on to the last bit because time is beating us.
No, I agree. I am agreeing with everything that's been said. And again, like Joan probably, it's been male coaches that I've had with squash and whatnot, and pickleball actually, but I'm only 2 years into pickleball. But so far it's just, you know, been male coaches. But I know of some, you know, women, but I totally agree about all these women and, you know, in high roles now. It's amazing to see this happening in football and whatnot. Even just newsreaders or sport presenters. We never saw it in our day. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's so good to see women achieving their goals.
Brilliant. Did Dylan have a second part to his question? Can you just read that, and then it will just about squeeze that in, I think, or have we done that?
Cool. So also the social side of table tennis is clearly very important for girls to retain interest and participation. Is it worth trying to have female specific sessions at an early stage rather than mixing in with all the boys? Most of the time, clubs don't have enough girls participating to warrant a gender-specific session, but maybe clubs need to work harder at promoting girls-only sessions.
Yeah. Before I ask one of you to take over that, Dylan makes the point, if I had a girls-only session in Moffat, I'd only have one girl there. But so if you like, Lucy comes with all the boys. So that's the hard thing, to get a group together in the first place. And once I've had a group of girls, I can keep them, but often it's 2 girls and 10 boys. And then they might drift away, not because the boys are unkind to them, because it's, you know, the boys haven't got the social skills to realise that they'll just hit the brakes, they'll just go into their huddles. And yeah, and I just want somebody, anybody want to pick up on that, girls only sessions? Charis, you're the current young coach at the moment, girls only sessions. You probably get more in rugby anyway, do you?
Yeah, but when I started out coaching the girls team, we did only have like 3. And you can't do much with 3, but we persevered for a long time, and then eventually, you know, got a team. But unfortunately, it fluctuates. We've got quite a few age groups where we have less and have more in other ones. But I do really see the benefit of girl only sessions. Like, as we've hinted through the whole kind of time we've been speaking, there's so many reasons maybe why girls don't feel like they should come to the sport or feel like it's the place for them. And sometimes having the girls only sessions does open that door, where I think it's so easy probably as a coach, if you're coaching mixed sports, which probably all of us do at some point, to think that everyone could come along, you know, it's fully inclusive, etc. But actually for some people, they do want these girl only sessions, and we would have lost a number of our girls anyway if we hadn't had that and hadn't put that on. So I think it is really, really important. Yes, you might only get a few, but you never know who you might get or who you might introduce to the sport, or even how you could support them to carry it on. So yeah, I think it is quite important.
Anybody else before? Yeah, go on then, Sue.
Yeah, I having been a volunteer and then chairman of a girls' football club, where we had very challenging times trying to get teams sometimes, and now I see girls' football and the growth in the last 10 years in girls' football is incredible. I think also in cricket, we find that if you put on girls' sessions, if you build it, they will come. You know, there will be girls who won't come because it's a mixed session. Then you never find out that they're not coming because it's a mixed session, because they never come.
Good point.
And so if you have girls only sessions, it can be quite dispiriting as a coach to start with, having very small numbers, like Charis said, and you feel you can't do what you want to do, but you have to hang on in there. And then before you know it, the numbers start to just gradually creep up, and girls will come and say, oh, you know, maybe one of my friends could come, and then somebody else says to somebody else. You know, I remember my daughter going to girls' football, age 12, and coming away from the first session when she was terrified going to it because she'd never been to a girls' only sports session before, and saying, Mum, they were all just like me. And that was the first time she had been surrounded by a group of girls that she felt were just like her. And that to me was incredibly powerful. And I think girls only sessions can do that, but I think you have to be prepared to hang on in there a bit. But definitely, I think it needs to be done if you want girls in your sport.
Excellent. Anybody else before we move on? And yeah, we're all happy. We can go. Right. Final question. What would you like to see for the future in women's sport? Susan, I'm going to start you. I've not given you any free warning on this. Do you just want to see more people in sport, better facilities, or because there is a progression, you're quite happy the way things are moving? So do you have a view, Susan?
Yeah, I would love to see more women play sport. I always said from a young age, because people saying, oh, I don't like sport. I believe there's a sport for everybody, male or female, but absolutely there's a sport for somebody. It's, you know, one sport will be, and if I didn't have sport in my life, I used to say that I used to work to pay for my sport. Do you know what I mean? It was, and I just feel that there is a sport for everybody out there. And when you see the enjoyment that it gives, it the social side. I know pickleball's an individual game, or we play pairs or whatever, but the social side for this, and it's a range of ages, men and women. But the women are going off on holidays now that would never have met each other if the sport hadn't brought them together. It's just I've met more people through the last 2 years than I did in squash, and I knew quite a lot of squash players over 30 years, but it's just what a group of people coming together, finding the love of one sport. So yeah, I'd love to see it's growing. That sport's grown, but any sport to grow and get women playing. You've got your young age, but see when they get to a wee bit older and they're either all the kids have left now, they're on their own, they need something. They need that social aspect, as do men as well. But yeah, just get everybody playing more sport would be great.
Right, Joan, the future, what do you anticipate, or what would you like to see if you had your crystal ball?
Yeah, I want to see everybody in Shetland playing table tennis.
Good.
From the very young to the very old. We're getting there. But yeah, no, I think there's more role models out there now, female role models and older role models. So I just want the children to see that you don't give up sport once you leave school, but you keep going. And table tennis is a fine sport, for any age, any size, any fitness level. So yeah, just like Susan, I'm just wanting the game to grow. And thankfully in Shetland, I think table tennis has grown. I think squash is kind of going down a little bit, but pickleball is on the rise in Shetland. And so, yeah, I just want to see women, girls, everybody just playing sport right through to a very old age. And I've met so many people and done so many things. So, yeah.
Right. In the future, Charis, what's your crystal ball?
I think it was just coverage, of women's sports, just having more of it. The fact that now when you speak to teammates, and when I went to my football session the other week, they asked me who my favourite football player was, and it's now favourite women's player. It's not the men's team. That's amazing how far it's came just since I was younger. That wouldn't have been a thing. I wouldn't probably known who was playing for Chelsea at the time in the women's game, but now you do. And I think it's just in 10 years' time, that coverage just to keep growing and keep being on TV and people being able to see role models in the women's game on the screen and aspire to be them. That'd be wonderful.
Good. And Sue, finally, crystal ball, what can you see?
I think we're getting there. I'm frustrated by the speed that we're getting there. It's been too slow as far as I'm concerned. I think hopefully the tipping point is coming, and it's about being able to see it to be it. So girls have to see other girls playing sport on TV, in the papers, in social media. They have to see the joy, because I think you see that more with women's sport, certainly at this point in time. When you watch women's sport, you see the joy more. I think they have to be given opportunity. They have to be given encouragement. They have to be given support to find a sport or several sports that suits them, because, like Susan said, there's a sport for everyone out there, but you need to know about it. And if you don't know about it, how are you expected to find it? So we have to make it easier for people. We have to make it more inclusive. We have to have more girls-only sessions. We have to have more female sport everywhere. It has to be not about how the sports people look. It has to be about who they are and the joy that they get and the joy of playing their sport and becoming the best athlete they can be, or playing their sport just because they want to go and meet their friends and have coffee afterwards, and everything in between.
Right. I'm going to finish on that. To see it is to be it. I'm going to use that. I'm going to say I invented it. Well done. That's a lovely one. To see it, to be it. Well, thank you all. We've covered a wide range of topics. So a big thank you to Susan, Sue, Charis and Joan. That was an interesting session. And we'll see you again soon. And thank you all for your time. That was excellent.
Thanks, David. Nice
Thanks,
to see you,
David.
Joan and Susie.
Thank you.
And nice to see you too, Charis.
Thank you,
Delighted
too.
to hear you're still in
Good to
sport.
see you all.